and today we are going to be learning about object-oriented programming in Python. Now, if you're stuck on this topic, you can access the practice notebook that I have made for you by clicking the link in the comments. So let's go into our Jupyter notebook and learn about object-oriented programming in Python. Okay, so here I am at my Jupyter notebook, and first I need to explain to you what object-oriented programming is. So, object-oriented programming, or OOP for short, tends to be one of the major obstacles. So it's really hard for beginners to come by when they're first starting to learn it, okay? So when they're first starting to learn Python. So don't worry, because I have made the notebook for you, and at the bottom of the note, and if you still haven't understood the notebook, there's a link at the bottom where you can access more resources. So for this lesson, we're going to build up our knowledge of OOP in Python by revising and learning the following topics. So the first topic is objects. So although I haven't told you what they are, you guys will be familiar with them once I have explained what they are to you. So after that, we're going to learn using the class keyword, because the main thing in object-oriented programming is using classes. So we're going to use the class keyword, creating class attributes, creating methods in a class, and learning about inheritance. So let's start the lesson by remembering about the basic Python objects. So for example, let me define an object. So list, and then 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this is an object, okay? Right here, this is an object, okay? So remember how we could call methods on list, okay? On lists. So like so list dot count, and then 2. Okay, so you got 1, 2. So basically these methods come from a certain class, okay? So maybe if you think about it, there could be a class called list where all the list methods come from, and a class called dictionary where all the dictionary methods come from. So in this lesson, we are going to learn how to make our own classes and our own methods. So since we've already learned functions, it would be really easy. But first, let's revise all the objects. So the way you can do this is to use the type function. Okay, so this tells us what type of object something is. So like if we wrote print and then type, so this is how you do it. And I'm going to say 1, and then I'm going to print out all the other types. So print type, and then I'm going to put a list of empty brackets. So that's an empty list right now, and then print type, and I'm going to put in brackets. So tuple print type, and then I'm going to put in some curly braces. So if you run this, it says class. So this comes from a certain class. So this class is in so the first one over here, so this number over here is from the class integer, and our empty list is from the class list, our empty tuple is from the class tuple, and our empty dictionary is from the empty class dict. Okay, so that's short for dictionary. So we all know these are objects. So how can we create our own objects using class? So this is where the class keyword comes in. So user-defined objects are created by using the class keyword. So a class is basically a blueprint that defines the nature of an object. So it's like the original area where the object is created. So, for example, like above, we created a list, and this was this list was in our class called list. So let's see how we can make and use a class. So first, I'm going to create a really simple class that doesn't really go into much. Okay, so first, instead of like a function putting def, you put class. And every time you put in a word, so if I say sample, the first letter has to be capital. So, and if I want to write sample class, instead of putting an underscore like that, you need to put in just joined and then a capital letter in front of each, at the start of each word. Okay. So I'm just gonna leave this as sample class, and you don't put any brackets because it's like a this is like a parent for different functions and methods, okay? And just underneath, I'm just going to put pass because this is a simple class, so I don't need to write much. So how you call a class? So first, you need to have 2 lines after your class over here, and then you can call it, okay? So here I'm going to call my sample class, but first I need to store my class into a variable so I can call it. So I'm going to put sample, and then I'm going to put sample class, and then I'm going to put in my pair of brackets. Even though there are no brackets here, you need to put them over here. And if I try to run X, nothing. If I try to run X, then nothing will happen. Okay, so it just tells me what this is. So if I put in type again, so I'll just print out the print type, and then X. So what type is X? It's a class, and it's a main class because I haven't put anything in it yet, so it will be called a name class. So now since we haven't got anything in our class, the first thing to building a class is putting in an attribute, okay? So for example, if we create a class called dog, an attribute of a dog may be like its breed or its name, while a method of a dog could be bark, might be a dot bark method, which returns a sound, okay? So let's get a better understanding of what attributes are for an example. So this is so let me show you the syntax for creating an attribute. So first you need to type in self dot attribute. So whatever your attribute is, you don't need to type in attribute, and then you store it in another variable name, or you can store it in the same name. And here, if you want to define an attribute, you need to put in 2 underscores in it, and then 2 underscores, brackets, self, and then you list all your attributes over here, okay? So let's look at our attribute throughout a class. So I'm going to create a class called dog, so capital letter again. So no brackets here. And first, if you want to define a method, like make your own method, then I put in the def keyword, 2 underscores in it, 2 underscores, okay? And this is where you can define your attributes. So I'm going to put in self, like I showed you before, and then my attribute is going to be breed, because a dog has a breed, okay? So here, obviously I need to put a colon here when I'm trying to call, and then here I need to put in self dot breed is equal to, and then whatever name you want, but I'm going to put in breed. And also most people tend to put in breed because it's much more easier, okay? So here, if I want to call my function, my class, so if I want to call one of these attributes and call my class, I'm going to say Sam, so let's say that's a dog name, is equal to dog. So I need to call my function, put in my brackets, and I'm going to list my attributes. So I'm going to say my breed is equal to a husky, for example. And then I'm going to store another variable, and this dog is going to be called Frank. and I need to call my dog class again, and this one is the breed is equal to a lab, so the breed is lab. So let's break down what we have done. So first, if we wanted to define our attributes, and we had to use the init method. Okay, so when you're defining the init method, it's compulsory to put in your two underscores and your brackets after it, and then we wanted to define our attribute. So how we did this is obviously we put on our def keyword in front, and then we put in self, and then breed. So the reason we put in self is it's an attribute. It's a way of calling an attribute. So defining and calling an attribute. And obviously we put a colon, and then let me just after that we put in we said self dot breed. So like I said, we use self to call, like, to introduce an attribute in this area, and then we stored this in a name where we can call it when we call our class. So if we want to call the function and get a result, what I want to do is say Sam dot breed, because I said the breed is here, so it should give me husky now. And the reason I stored these in variables is because it's way easier, and it won't make sense if you put it on your own. So I'm going to call my breed of my dog called Sam. From I get husky. Now let me try Frank. Frank dot breed. And then if I call this, I get lab. Okay, so I don't need to put in any brackets here because attributes don't have brackets after them. So literally we don't have any brackets because it's an attribute, not a method. So let's apply this logic over here. So I'll define my dog class again. So class dog. And then here, if you want, you can actually just define your attribute just like that. So I can say species. So even though that's not the correct word, we're just going to use that. So instead of so we're going to use species as a word for now, and I'm going to say mammal. So here I just defined it over here, so I didn't put all that process where I had to put in it and all that. That is because I put this here, so I don't need to call it, okay? And here after that, I'm going to define the attributes that I can actually call. So I need to write in def, and then underscore underscore init, underscore underscore brackets, and then self. I'm still putting in breed, and then I'm going to put in name. And after that, let's just use this space over here. So after I've written that, I need to actually put them in a name where we can call it. So I can say self dot breed is equal to breed, and then self dot name is equal to name. So now we have done, like, defined our class and put in this over here. So it does this. If we do this, it won't get called. It's just a way to store it. So if we do that, and then we store Sam again into a variable. So I'm going to store my dog class into a variable and put in the following values for my attributes. So my first value, it obviously says breed, so I need to put in my breed. So husky. And then the name will be Sam. Okay, so if I ask for Sam. And if I press dot and then tab, it'll give me breed, name, species. Okay, so right here, I didn't need to put in the value of species because it was giving a default value. Okay, so I didn't need to put it in here. So if I call breed and run that, I get my breed. So if I ask for the name, I get my name. And if I ask for the species, then I get mammal. Okay, so here this is how I put in attributes, and and here we put in an attribute with a default value. Okay, so this is how you put in attributes and attributes with default values. Okay, so now we are going to add in methods. Now, what methods are? They're like methods we can use on lists. So, for example, if we put in lst again, list dot append, and then we can put in 6. Okay, so and if I call my list again, see, it gives me 6. So this dot append is a method, okay, and these methods are defined inside the list class. So let's define another class, and I'm going to call this circle. Okay, so first I need to define an attribute with a default value. So I'm going to say pi is equal to 3.14. Okay, not 24, 14. And here we are going to give the circle the attributes area and radius, because we are going to use this for setting. We are going to use these attributes in our methods as well. So a bit like using parameters and functions, you can use methods and you can use attributes in methods. So let's define the attributes first. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then self, and then I'm going to set radius to a default value when I'm defining it. Okay, so radius is equal to 1. Okay, so right now the radius is equal to 1. And the reason I didn't define area, you're going to see right now. So right now I need to set radius to a value, how I can call it. So I'm going to say self.radius is equal to radius. Okay, and then here I'm going to define my area attribute. So self.area is now equal to radius times radius times circle dot pi. Now the reason I put in circle dot pi is because it's defined outside of my of where I define my attribute. So I need to put in circle dot pi. And this is extra helpful because sometimes if you have loads and loads of classes and you have a lot of attributes set to default values over here, then you're going to want to put in like circle.pi, circle.this, circle.that, because sometimes if you're having multiple classes, it's going to be really confusing. So here I'm going to define a method that sets a radius. So that sets a radius for my circles. So I'm going to say def set radius, and here I'm going to put in 2 attributes over here. So I've got self and then new radius. So let me put in that self and new radius. So those are my 2 attributes I'm defining here, and obviously I need to say self dot radius is equal to new radius. So as you saw, I defined an attribute over here to another attribute over here. Okay, so now I need to define the area attribute again. So self.area is equal to new radius times self dot pi times 2. Okay, so here I'm just setting my radius. Now here I'm going to define a method that gets the circumference. Okay, so I'm going to say def get circumference, and I'm going to put in self here, so I'm not defining any attributes here. I'm going to use all the attributes here, and all I want to return is self dot radius times self dot pi. So here, as you saw, I didn't put circle dot pi, I put self dot pi because I already defined circle dot pi here, so I need to put in self dot pi now. And then here I need times 2. And now I'm going to call my function. Okay, so now, whoops, let me just put this in. Now I'm going to say C is equal to my class circle, and I'm not loading in any attributes. So after I have put this, I'm going to print the radius. Whoops. So radius is, and then C dot radius, because I want to call my radius. And then I'm going to say area. Whoops, I need to put in my print first. Print area is, and then colon, and then obviously we need to concatenate it with C dot area. And then I'm going to put in print circumference, and put this in quotations first. So circumference is, and then I need to concatenate that with C dot get circumference. Okay, so let's get the result. Whoops. Oh no, I need to change this. Area radius is 1. Radius is 1. Area is 3.14. Circumference is, and then I need to. Oops, I need to put in my brackets over here because this is a method, so obviously I need to put in my brackets. So I get radius is 1, area is 3.1 is 3.14, circumference, so not circumference, circumference is 6.28. Okay, so those are correct. So in the init method above, so in order to calculate the area attribute, we had to call the circle.pi. This is because the object does not have its own pi attribute, so we have to call the class's object attribute pi instead, because there is no attribute over here saying pi. And obviously, as you saw here, our radius was set to 1, so that's why it is 1. Okay, so in the set radius method over here, we were working with an existing circle object that does have its own pi attribute. Okay, that is because in radius over here, we defined circle.py here. So all we need to do is put in self.py. Okay, so here we can use either circle.py or self.py. So let's see how, now let's change the radius and see how that affects our circle object. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to edit this one over here. C dot set radius. So the reason I actually defined this is because in case the user wanted to put in their own radius, they could just put it in with the set radius method. So set radius, I'm going to set that to 2. And let me just fix this error. Okay, so I need to put in capital letters. So radius is 2, area is 12.56, circumference is 12.56. Okay, so successfully it changed our radius for us over here. So literally the only reason why we put in our set radius method is if the user wanted to change their radius. So notice how we used the self notation to refer attributes that were in other methods. So just think about that, and once you've thought about it, try and make your own methods, okay, using like this, okay, so with methods and attributes and maybe default value attributes as well. Okay, so now we have learned about how to create methods. We are now going to learn about inheritance. Now, inheritance is a way to form new classes using other classes. So, for example, let's say, like in the scientific word inheritance, like a child inherits from their parents. So this is similar, except we're doing it with classes. So we inherit, so if we have a parent class, and then we inherit all the methods and attributes from it. Okay, so let me show, so the way we're going to learn inheritance is by looking at an example. So let me define one. So I'm going to say, I'm going to have a class called animal. Okay, so I've got my nice animal class over here, and I'm going to define some attributes. So def, and then init, and then I don't have any attributes yet. So once it has, so when this method is run, then attributes are optional. You can even just put like a function running in this attribute section over here. So if this attribute is run, I just want to print animal created. Okay, so my animal is created. And now I'm going to define a function called whoami. And here, obviously I used to use the def keyword. And put in my name. So like functions, you don't always need to put in capital letters for methods. So you can put in capital letters and small letters. So who am I? And obviously I need to put in the self keyword when I am defining a method. And when it says who am I want to print out animal. Okay, so if I call this who am I method, I want to print animal. So now I'm going to define a method called eat. So again, we need to put in our def keyword and put in eat, and then self colon, and then when this method is called, I want to print out I am eating. Okay, so I am eating. And now this is my parent class right now. So now I'm going to define the dog class again. So obviously I need to put in my 2-line space, and then I defining my class. So I'm going to inherit from that class. Now let me show you how that's done. So class dog, and it's really simple. So all I need to do is put in my brackets over here. Instead of putting self, I'm going to put in animal. So now what our Python interpreter will do, it will take all the methods from animal and put it in dog. But obviously these methods won't be lost. They will still stay in animal. We're just we're just we're like duplicating those methods and putting those methods in our dog class. So let's just define our dog class again. So I'm going to say def init self. So here I'm going to have an empty attribute. I'm going to have an empty attribute list again. So I'm going to say, so instead of actually defining an attribute, I can put in my animal attributes in here. So I'm going to say animal dot init, and then I'm going to put in I'm just going to run this method in here, okay? And then after it has done that, I'm going to print dog created. So it will say animal created, then dog created. And after that, I want to tweak some of the methods from in animal when they are in dog. So I won't change them in here if I tweak them over here. So I'm going to say def who am I again. So who am I? And I'm just going to tweak this a bit because I don't want to say animal. I want to say dog. So I'm going to print dog instead of animal. And now I want to define a bark method. So I'm going to say def bark self. Obviously, we need to put in a self keyword when we define methods. And then when the user runs this method, I want to print out woof because that is how a dog barks. So let me just put this in quotations. And now we are going to run this method. So I'm going to say d is equal to dog. And let's see if our dog class has inherited. So animal created, dog created. Okay, so right now it ran this method because it will run this method if you call the dog class. So now let's call all the other attributes. So I'm going to say d dot bark. Oops, put in our brackets because it's a method. Woof, yes, that's working. So d dot tab eat. I am eating. Good. D dot and then who am I? Dog. Okay. So notice how we tweaked it here and it didn't change. And let's see if it changed animal or not. So if I say A is equal to animal, on this it says animal created obviously, and I'm going to look at the who am I method because let's see if it changed or not because I changed it in dog, so let's see if it changed in animal. So I'm going to say a dot who am I, and then brackets animal. See, it did not change. We just inherited it and changed it in our dog class and not our animal class. Okay, so here we have our two classes, as you can see, animal and dog. And so we refer to this animal class as a base class. So it's a nice sturdy base for all the other classes that want to inherit from animal. Okay, so our dog class is called a derived class. Okay, that is because we derive or inherit from our base class. Okay, so here, and obviously you saw that all of this we inherited all the methods, but and we inherited all the attributes as well. So This is all you need to know on functions, and if you're still stuck, you can go to the notebook and it will have quite good explanations. And if you're still not stuck, you can click the link that I have mentioned in the notebook. So I guess that's it. Bye.